Welcome to another edition of Throwing Out Some Heavy Light. My name is Jamal Binding. We're having a little challenge here. Our guests have not been able to catch up with us tonight, which is interesting. Ben Salazar. I just want to give an introduction of some things we're going to talk about, and then we probably will end a little bit early if we got other folks want to make comments. But I've been knowing Ben for many years, probably over 35 years or more. Ben is a longtime community advocate. He is strongly involved in the Chicano community, attempting to awaken those who are standing on the sidelines who are afraid to challenge racism and anti-immigration issues, and particularly ICE and what's been going on. One of the things is he's been able to provide examples for young people as well as help people to understand how you can still challenge people and speak truth to power. He's also challenged lazy elected officials who are smug and sleeping on the job. And in the history of the city and county government, there has only been one Latino elected to all official in the city hall, to my knowledge, and that's in county government. I first heard about Ben when when I was on the board of the Chicano Awareness Center about 40 years ago. Ben has also been at the forum when we talked about racist police stops of people of color in Omaha, and particularly in the state of Nebraska. Some years ago, there was a reports that was issued each year, and again, that's when I first saw Ben involved. Ben is also a Vietnam vet. He's a former newspaper publisher and one of the few Latinos in Omaha who writes about current conditions consistently in our community. We'd wanted to talk a little bit also about his relationship with LULAC because he's had a number of, I wouldn't call them diatribes or fierce bullets aimed at some of the ineptitude of things that has happened between what's happening in the organization and some of the things he saw related to the relationship with the police department, particularly some of the issues dealing with law enforcement in general, both the sheriff and as well as the Omaha Police Department. One of the things I wanted to talk to Ben, like I said, he's not here. I tried to catch up with him. I talked to him earlier today, and he had asked me to remind him a couple of times, which I did yesterday. And then, of course, we talked today, so I'm not sure what happened. But anyway, what I'm going to do is just kind of make some comments, open it up if somebody want to make comments. And then we may not go, obviously, the full hour. We might just go like 15 minutes or whatever if other people want to make comments about what's going on in our community. And some of the questions I wanted to ask Ben and talk about is some of the issues that happened in back in the day a couple of years ago. Ben challenged the lack of equity in the summer youth program with Willie Barney and those guys, where they have services for a lot of the kids in North Omaha, but they don't have an equal program in South Omaha. And so Ben raised the issue about how can we spend government money and not have a sense of equity to some of the other kids or young people in our community. And so I'm not sure what came out of it, but I wanted to ask him about that, particularly the elected officials who had a smug relationship with certain personalities, but wouldn't share the love to other Latinos or Native or Asian people in our community who also have programs. The other question I wanted to talk about, he had a powerful, I think, essay about the war in Iran. I don't know anybody who writes on that level, but he talked about the murder of those innocent girls in that school and so on. And he also cited some other atrocities as the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis at that time. He also talked about Wounded Knee, Native Americans, a Vietnamese girl in Malai who was burnt, or not Malai, the girl was burnt by the American bomb. He didn't talk about Malai per se. He might have alluded to that. He did allude to the Tulsa race massacre that happened in the early part of the 19th century. And I wanted to find out what made him write that. And then another thing I wanted to share with Ben is the issue of how come we don't have many Latinos and African Americans reaching across the threshold, as I call it, the Mason-Dixon line of Dodge Street, where you got people who are very concerned about what happens in their respective communities reaching across that. We also was going to talk about the issue of his issue about the lack of organizations that have dealt with brown-black coalition in the city that has not been sustained or done any significant output, as indicated by the great disparities amongst brown and black youth in our educational system, juvenile justice. And if you look at our systems, there's not a sense of equity, even though Latinos and African Americans and Native Americans and Asians and even the immigrants who are from parts of Africa and other parts make up almost 35% of this city's population of Omaha. But you would never know that looking at this, the city hall, county government, so on, because again, a lot of those people don't represent our community. So we're going to talk about that. And then the other point, I know he's been very critical of the South Omaha City Council person, Ron Hugg, who, to my knowledge, his greatest achievement is writing about people parking their cars on the yards and that, but not speaking truth to power and also challenging some of the dysfunctional things that happen with some of the services to many of the Latino youth in our community. So Ben has really gone toe to toe with some of these guys, and I've been very impressed with his work, as I say, Both of us are in their elderly days, as they say, we got, as Bill Clinton says, we have more years behind us than in front of us. And one of the things that I've talked to Ben about today, we talked about there are very few people who are able to pick up the mantle and do what we've done, who have a sense of no fear in challenging racism, all the kind of isms that we need to be challenged to make our community much healthier and safer. And again, one time I talked to Ben, I says, Ben, how many Latinos are like you? And he asked me the same question. Oh, there he is. He just came in. So he asked me the same question, and I says, "Hey," he said, "Aljama, how many people color like you are African American?" So we were talking about those kind of things, which was fascinating in light of all the stuff that we both did. But finally, he came in and he's here. Ben, you there? Yeah, I just saw he logged on. And then the other thing we want to talk about a little bit is how can we get more people involved in doing social justice? You know, back in the day when I was at Catholic Charities for about 25 years, there were a lot of people involved in challenging systems and doing civil rights kind of things. And we haven't seen a lot of people do that. So one of the things we want to talk about is how can we get more people to do that kind of work? Ben, we've been waiting on you. I did kind of an intro on you already, long-winded. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Facebook Live because we wanted to hesitate on that
Yeah,
until
go
we
ahead.
had you on the show. And Dealer, are we Facebook Live?
1 second, let me
Oh,
check.
I'm still locking in. Okay, sorry, how can I say that quick when I haven't done on my side on this side. So Ben, what I did before you got here, because I went through some of the questions I was going to ask you and gave a little intro about you. So I went through all that already, and we
Okay.
recorded that. But I'm gonna give a brief intro, and then we go right into the question because you and I got a lot to talk about. We do have one person who might be. Is it there, Dilly? Are we live?
1 second, 1 second.
Yeah, we like to do live along with our Zoom thing, so we can got the people out there who don't have access to Zoom watch us all over the world. We got followers all over, and a lot of people watch these shows, Ben, after the fact. Is it there, Dilly?
Okay. Live,
No,
you're
that's
live.
cool. We're live. Okay. So today we have on the studios with us is Ben Salazar. He's a longtime community advocate and been involved in issues for many years. Originally from Scottsbuff. I just had a chance to visit Scottsbuff, his home territory, where he grew up and learned a great deal about what's going on in that part of the world. Me and Ben had a wonderful conversation about some of the things that I didn't see there and reminisce about his home and things like that and what he went through. As I said earlier, he's a Vietnam vet. He's been one of the very few people who've challenged people across the Mason-Dixon line, meaning Dodge Street. He gets involved in issues related to all people of color and oppressed folks. So those are rarities. And as I've said earlier, Ben is one of those individuals who've been in the trenches for many years. And I met him over 35 years ago, as I mentioned about at a couple of community meetings, particularly when I was on the board of Latino Center in the Midlands today, but back then it's called Chicano Awareness Center. So Ben, welcome to the show. And first, I just want you to start a little bit, maybe share a little about who you are from your perspective, and then we'll get right into the meat of the questions.
Can you see me okay?
I see you well. You're looking good, man. You're looking good. See you
Okay.
perfect. You're looking good.
All right.
Sounding good too.
Uh, yeah, I was born and raised in Scottsbluff, West Nebraska, which is part of the migrant trail
Hmm.
for workers coming in from Mexico and Texas. And so that area of the Panhandle, which stretches from South Dakota, parts of Wyoming, West Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas, all of that area is lush with farmers raising crops like beets, corn, potatoes, a variety of field corn, not just for cattle feed, but for human feed. So that whole area relies on agriculture, but once they got agriculture in place more than 100 years ago, the farmers were able to expand the terrain that they were farming, and as a result, they needed workers. So some of the farmers went down to the border and actively started recruiting Mexican farm laborers to come north. And so over the course of probably at the height between the late teens to about 1940, there was a rush of Mexican and Mexican American workers coming up north to work out in the fields. When I was growing up in West Nebraska in the summers, I would often go out to the fields to work with my older sisters. I have three older sisters and my mom. And then when he got old enough, a younger brother. So we all worked out in the fields in the summer. That was expected. It was extra money for the family. It was money to buy our clothes for the winter. and for school. And
Mhm.
so that's how we made our money. Uh, Now that was uncommon for us in that community I grew up in. I was telling Ajamal that I grew up in a barrio, which was the southeast part of Scottsbluff, and we had a little community center there. And I was telling Ajamal we played basketball on a outdoor cement court. And I think at times we had no netting, so we'd make our own netting and put it up on these rims. And then right across the alley, we had a dirt ball field, which was actually less smaller than a little league. But
Mhm.
that's where we grew up playing baseball on that dirt field. And this was our athletic fields in that part of town. So that's the way I grew up, working playing ball on the
Ben, let
street.
me ask you: you didn't have a
Yeah,
boys' club or some kind of organized institution when you grew up in Scottsbluff, like we
no,
have in Omaha?
no, no, we had nothing like that. The closest thing was really the community coming forward. Boxing was a big deal back then in my neighborhood. We had Golden Gloves boxing. And that was a big event during the year. Golden Gloves was a huge event. We had a coach who also coached our baseball team. So those were the big sports. Some of the athletes played football. We had a couple guys that actually played basketball. I I became aware of the dual classes, that caste system of classes based on race, based on ethnicity in my hometown. The dominant majority, of course, ruled the city, ruled the town. And in that part of Nebraska, the biggest migratory forces were Germans and German Russians.
Oh
And
wow!
so that was the leadership of our town, was mainly from that part of the world. So those folks came in and got farms and got businesses going. We came in and, like I say, gradually over a course of about 30, 40 years, but even into the 1950s and into the early 60s, we still had migrants coming north from Texas primarily to work in the fields. And I had some interesting run-ins with some people from Texas based on my advocacy after I came out of the military.
Hmm.
So I went to work right out of high school.
Hmm.
High school was a necessity in my
And by the way,
family.
what high school was it? Is that Scottsbluff High School that I saw when I was there last week? The same
Yeah.
school? Okay.
Well, actually, you probably saw the new school
Yeah,
with
it's
all the
beautiful.
glass and everything.
Very, very
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. Well, there's another high school a few blocks south of there, which was the school I went to till about 11th grade. And we had an old-fashioned structure, brick structure. That was our high school, and that's the one we felt at home in. But that's the school we started in. Then we moved over in the 11th grade, I mean, junior year, to that new high school, which was not as comfortable. It was a lot of glass
Was
and
it segregated when you were there? Did you have integration in Scottsbluff the time you were growing up in the schools?
no, we didn't. Well, no, we didn't. They didn't segregate us, but our part of the town, we had a predominantly Latino grade school, mainly because it was situated in our part of town.
Oh, got you. Close to the neighborhood. Got
So
you.
it was about 70% Mexican and Mexican American kids went to that one school. And then as you went to high school, you kind of assimilated into the larger population, which was mainly white kids.
Got you.
Uh, as young as my junior high years, I was a great student in grade school. I was a straight A student in grade school. Education kind of came easy to me, kind of went with the flow. I was a shy kid, if you can believe it. I really was a very shy kid. I took care of an older sister who had hearing problems since she was a baby and she couldn't speak very well.
Hmm.
So my mom put me ahead a grade to take care of her and watch over her
Ben, I got
because she,
about 10 questions I want to throw at you rapid fire if I can, because there's some questions I want you to answer based on all the stuff you've been
no,
doing.
no, go ahead, man.
So
Yeah,
anyway, let
that's
me
just,
let me start off. And I'm gonna go a little rapid fire. You on Face the Nation type stuff. You way back in the day. So over the years, you've written many essays about crazy situations, ranging from the racist takeover of the youth program in South Omaha. Remember that, and the lack of equity in summer city millions of dollars funding for the Empowerment Network summer youth program, and some of those programs go to kids in South Omaha and so on. And my question is, have those elected or public officials addressed the merits of your concerns you raised a number of years ago? Have that been addressed? Equity
no,
for the summer youth program.
no, no.
Wow.
Not at all. In fact, that's one of the things that we've lamented for many years. Uh, Last year, the year before, when the city council, Vinnie Palermo, was ousted and got into some legal hassles, legal problems.
Well, he was
So
arrested, right? The city
yeah,
council got
he was
arrested, thrown in
removed.
jail.
So there was an opening there for a city councilman to be selected by a majority of the other sitting council members.
Right.
And it was an opportunity for us to have a Latino city councilman for the first time ever.
In the history
But
of Omaha.
but this majority, which was an enclave of older guys, older white guys, they decided that Ron Hug would be our city councilman. And that was and has been a complete bust. The man, unfortunately, knows absolutely. Well, I mean, I got to be honest, right? The
Well,
man
you
knows
always been
zero.
calling him Ron. I know you the one few who called him on the carpet on many occasions.
I had to, man, because he doesn't know anything about community unless he cares less about our community. So
Wow.
he doesn't go out of his way to know us, to learn about us, to integrate himself into who we are, and that's to his. Unfortunately, that looks bad on him because when you're not a curious person, that tells me a lot about your character and your personality. Isn't that right? If you're not a curious person about your surroundings
Right.
and awareness, and this is what I observed as a young man. I was gradually becoming aware that we were in a two-tier system
Right.
in my hometown with the Latinos, and there were a few blacks in the community that had gotten there years before us
By the way, how
even.
many black people live there? Because when I was there, one of the Native American women told me she thought there was 22 black people in Scottsbuff.
If,
I thought that was
if
pretty
there's
low.
if there's that many, Ajmal, I'd be
Oh,
surprised if there's that many. Yeah, no, it's a very
wow.
small story, and they lived right in our community. They lived with
Okay, in
us
the
in our
Latino
community.
community or Chicano
Yeah,
community.
and
Okay.
the Native American population was about the same.
Oh, small also. Okay.
All very small. Now they migrated in occasionally from the reservations on the northern tier of Nebraska and South Dakota.
Right.
They would
Right.
come in and visit and shop and do those kinds of things and then return back to the reservation. But Native Americans, for the most part, were almost absent. Although I do have cousins that are related to some Native Americans. So I mean, we're kind of integrated in our community with people having intermarried blacks, Latinos, Native Americans. So there is some of a mixture
Okay.
there
Got you there.
among the racial groups.
Got you.
But for the
Got you.
most part, it's Mexican American and Mexican
The dominant
immigrants that
group,
live there.
minority group. Now, other thing I
Yeah,
want to come back is in one of your recent pieces, you wrote a brief essay about the war in Iran and the murder of
yeah.
those innocent Iranian children in that country. You also cited some other atrocities, such as the killing of George Floyd by the police officer in Minneapolis. You talked about Wounded Knee massacre of Native Americans, the Vietnamese girl who was running down the street after being burned by an American bomb, and you also talked about the Tulsa race massacre that happened back in the early 60s. My question is, what compelled you to write about a wonderful, powerful reminder that we shouldn't forget about the fascism and the racism in this country? And also, did you get pushback when you wrote that piece? Because I know you shared it with a lot of people in our community.
I've been told by a couple of friends who work in large foundations that when they saw me at a couple of occasions the last couple of weeks, I had one lady come up to me and a friend of mine said to me in her own kind of fashionable tones, she said, Ben, I just want you to be careful. I said, I am careful. I said, but I'm an honest man. And in this world, I decided when I came out of the Vietnam experience and wanted to walk the earth like a man should walk the earth.
Right.
That was my feeling about myself. I wanted to walk like a man, which means I have to be honest with myself and I have to be honest with whatever I say or what I write. And if people are offended, I'm sorry, but this is what I see. In the reality, I write about what the real situations are that surround us. The Vietnamese girl, you remember that?
Right.
You're old enough to remember
Right.
her.
Right.
She was bombed. Her family at the village was bombed. And that awakened people in this country to, wow, what kind of atrocities are we committing? I was going to write something today, Ajmal, about people, these intellectual people, these smart, intelligent PhDs and others are discussing what is a war crime. Has this president committed war crimes in Iran by what? And I'm thinking, stop the nonsense. Stop the nonsense. Stop the foolishness. You don't have to look in a book or precedents or other books to figure out that this is a war crime at the highest level.
Right.
It's fundamentally flawed. This man is flawed. He's inept. He's crazy. And so he'll do crazy things like this, which means whatever's in the books about war crimes, he doesn't give a damn about.
Right. It's
All
obvious.
right. We can see with our own eyes what's happening overseas right now as we speak. People are being murdered. They're being killed by bombs that we are complicit with because
Right.
we live in America. To me, you don't have to argue about whether it's a war crime or not. It's inhumane. It's inhumane You don't have to into a book to figure out what's happening overseas as a war crime. Of course, it's a war crime. It's inhumane actions on our part, and I feel guilty. I feel complicit because I'm an American,
Well, you're
and so
speaking
I
out,
have to
you're
say
pushing
something.
back, Ben. I mean, part of my point I saw today where he's talking about he wants to kill the whole country. In other words, use a nuclear bomb. And I know that if that happens or even thought of, matter of fact, he should be impeached for even saying it. In other words, you
Right.
got folks, when you certain things you say in a position like that and you try to put fear, he should be able to. Let me switch up a little bit again. I want to go to something you did. And again, I'm talking about a lot of things that you've been involved in. Some months ago, you wrote a letter where you were in your letter writing exchange with Elsa Ramon, who's the former director of LULAC. I know she didn't live in Omaha, but she lived in Lincoln. I understand she's no longer living in Nebraska. And you talked about her role of controlling and weighing in on issues impacting Latinos in Nebraska after she left the state and the organization. And in one of the pieces, she said she would run for office in Omaha to establish herself kind of like as some leader or some person, a credible person. Are you still concerned about her impact in the state? And is she now a resident of Wisconsin from your vantage point?
I have no idea where she lives, Ajmal. I called her out because everybody that I know in South Omaha knows that she doesn't live here. So, for the mere fact that she had the gall, the audacity to say she had moved into South Omaha to establish herself was a flat out lie. And so, when someone lies like that in order to promote themselves, elevate themselves in the public's eye, in a public that may not even know whether she is or not down in South Omaha, she's not. So of course I had to call her out and say, you don't live here. You don't live here. Don't posture yourself as being a representative of my community, which you're not. She's a self-aggrandizing person, and all she cares about is herself. Now the thing with me that I have seen over a long period of time, and you have too, I'm sure, is there are certain individuals in different professions as they climb the ladder they forget about everybody else and
Where
it's
they
all
came
about
from?
themselves.
Right,
It's
you're
all
right.
about themselves. And they do a lot of self-aggrandizement, puffery, nonsense, lying. I mean the worst kinds of people. And really many of these folks, not all of them, but many of these folks that elevate themselves on a fake platform, do themselves more harm because I believe in this old truism of to thy own self be true first. It starts with self. So you have to be honest and truthful with yourself before you can speak to the larger population. And to pretend that you're going to elevate yourself as a spokesperson for my community, to me, I find it very offensive. And I don't need that kind of nonsense in my community because we have enough trouble fighting the powers that be without people coming in the back door,
Right.
and trying to pretend that they lead my community when they don't.
Right. By the way, the word we use is narcissistic, and again, you look at them; they haven't busted a grape, they never written a letter, they never speak out, they sit on the sideline. As my mother used to say, once you shovel the snow, they want to come and walk on your sidewalk, act like they shoveling, they never busted a grape to get where we are at in this day. Now I'm gonna switch up. Malcolm X once said that we're outgunned because we're out organized. Why is there not a strong alliance between black and brown folks in Omaha? We make up almost 35% of this city population. But if you look at the boards of directors, organizations, the Great White Saviors, we're nowhere proportional in those numbers except in jail and prison. But how come we haven't done a good job in the black brown coalition building from your vantage point?
I think it goes down to trust where we don't have leaders, and even in our own community, we're lacking real leadership. I keep waiting for people to step up, and I know they're out there who are competent, but yet they run into themselves. Maybe they don't want to put themselves out there. So we have to develop ourselves in terms of a political action committee or community before we can delve into, for example, North Omaha. Now, you know me, I do work together with some of the folks in North Omaha
Right. You've
on
always
several
have
committees.
from day one.
Yeah,
Day one.
I do integrate myself into North Omaha as well as the white community. I do what I can with people that will at least share time with me and be honest about it and not fool with me or waste my time. But it's always been a difficult problem to integrate large groups. And in Omaha, it's fairly new. This thing about having such a large community of Latinos now.
Right.
I mean, that's
14% of
fairly
the
new.
population, 14% African Americans, by 11%. But you add all those numbers, it goes up to 35%, one
It,
third. You know,
it's
that's
probably more. It's probably more than that. I mean, if you look at the school children that are enrolled in OPS, the Latino kids in OPS, I think, and I'm being conservative when I say this, it's about 40%
oh wow.
in the school kid are Latino kids. Now
Wow.
you add African American kids, at least 25%.
Right.
So if you're looking at OPS, you're looking at least close to 50%, if not more,
Probably
of the
more,
of
majority.
the
Our
kids
students
in
of
those
colors, right.
schools
You're right.
are kids of color. Right. But getting together with the African American community, like I said, I'm an independent guy. I do a lot of my work alone. Now I do serve on a couple of important committees. I've been asked invited to participate with folks. Uh, but I'm always available with, and I have been for years. One of my running partners for years was Ernie Chambers. I consider Ernie one of my mentors, my main mentor in life and how I conduct myself and the things that I get involved with. And Ernie, whenever I needed Ernie down in South Omaha for some kind of a shooting, a killing, an unjustified shooting, something like that, he was right there with me. He's always been right there and available to me. And I appreciate that man so much that he came into my life when I was a college student at the University of Nebraska. And getting to know him kept me straight, because if you're not straight with Ernie, you don't want to, that means there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, I've seen you take a few people to the woodshed on many
Oh
occasions.
my.
Even those
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
and he doesn't cut any. I mean, he's serious about that. Another question I got for you, and again, it's related to what you just said about Ernie and just elected and public officials. We have a new black mayor and a former deputy police chief and a chief of staff who's a former chief of police and so on. We have a white guy who's been found guilty of malfeasance during his watch of defending sexual harassment. The city Omaha lost almost $500,000 in that case of that settlement. She was going for $1 million, I understand. And with this unholy trinity, what can we do to get the thin blue line to act in the interest of people of color instead of running around for photo ops and increasing the police budget? Because I also know that you shared and I shared and other folks that we had over 60 some complaints last year, and they have not found in the favor of one of the victims or one of the citizens. It was always about themselves and so on. So my question basically is that how can we get them to step up, or can we get them to step in, because they're the Trinity, as they say,
Yeah.
the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, who's got the most. And especially when you have the chief of police come out and say the black community should tone down its rhetoric when Bud Crawford was arrested and put in handcuffs. I'm like, how can you say that when we have a history of brutality and killing of African Americans and Latino folks in this city and in this state? How can you say that in this day and age? So my question is, what do you think is going to happen in City Hall looking at the Trinity that's in place?
I was at a meeting with a coalition of black and brown folks several months ago, and the mayor had just come into office. This goes back about 4 or 5 months, maybe. And we were down at City Hall in a large room, a meeting room. And one of the things that told me a lot about this mayor is when uh, I think one of the black folks was talking about crime in North Omaha, and the fact that we needed to remake the auditor's position or have a
Oh
more
yeah.
effective criminal justice system. There's a lot of racism internally in the judicial system, and the complaint system is a farce. Filing complaints against the police with the police department is a farce,
A joke.
and so that was a conversation. The mayor's response was, well, we had an auditor at one time, but she was ridiculous. Her findings were off the charts. I didn't like her. Now, this is the new mayor saying
Wow,
this.
painful
And
to hear
so,
that.
yeah, he said, I didn't like her. I didn't like what her conclusions. And so I had to interrupt the mayor and said, Mayor, wait a minute. With all due respect, Tristan Bond was doing a pretty effective job in my estimation. I saw her work product. I saw her numbers, statistics that she compiled. She was actually on our side meaning the community side.
Right, exactly.
I saw her as working for us in a neutral manner. So what you're saying is not true in my estimation. If you ask people in South Omaha, and I don't know about North, but South Omaha, I think Tristan Bond was doing a pretty good job, and I think that scared people like you and the chief and others in the department. Now, why it should scare you, I have no idea, because you work for us. You guys work for the community. and you ought to be able to do a good job and an honest job for the community without calling her out and saying that she wasn't doing a good job. I don't believe that.
Well, you know, the thing that she told me, because I was one of the committees on this vice committee she had, she says, Osmal, if you could go and look at those police records, it would be the most scandalous, patent place you ever seen in your life. She said basically she was confined to basically just looking at stuff, but she couldn't talk about all the malfeasance in the department from you name it, sexual things they were doing, you know, just all under stuff they brought to task. But again, they have a kangaroo court. And again, you cannot have 63 people or 70, whatever, complain and you can't find one of them, just like the grand jury. You got those Latinos who were killed a couple of years ago in the car. You had African Americans who've been killed. And we got a county attorney and a police department who covers it up because they're corrupt. They're dirty. And that's the bottom line. But anyway, let me switch up. I don't want to get on them too
Well,
much.
no. Let
Go
me
ahead.
touch on something. Let me touch on something important because I don't think it was publicized enough. When Kathy Gonzalez won her lawsuit against the police in the
A
city,
half a million
for dis-
dollars.
no, close to $1 million,
Okay.
and she's got another case still pending,
Oh, I didn't
where
know
I
that.
know, and I know she's also going to win this other one. But when she was in court, and I attended that trial several days, and I listened, and I was there when the chief of police was testifying at one point. Now, do you know, and a lot of people don't know this, but the reason that Kathy won her lawsuit against OPD is based on the chief's lies, because he lied on two occasions during the course of the investigation.
Wow.
He lied, and that's why she prevailed. Now,
Wow.
any other chief of police in that same situation who was found liable, and he was the main reason that she won close to $1 million lawsuit against OPD in the cities, because of the chief of police told some lies. Okay, and the jury saw through his testimony, and that's why they gave her the verdict.
Wow.
Now, any other person, if that had been a person of color as a chief of police who lied under oath,
I lost that
and
much
that's
money.
we would have been fired. There's no question. We would have been fired if one of us had been the chief of police, had done that and cost the city that much money. They would have fired us, no doubt.
Right. Matter of fact, I remember Bush Laquan, Latino guy, he had cost some money and they got rid of him immediately, even though he's been in the job, was doing a halfway decent job. But when it comes to the bottom line of money, sometimes they let you go. And again, as you said earlier, Ben, for people of color, they have the bar much higher for us and people like him. And like I say, I've heard stories, all kinds of malfeasance in the department because some of the police officers tell stories. And again, you can't make some of this stuff up. And it's just unfortunate. I'm going to switch up again, go back to something you said earlier. Currently, the I want to say South African. I want to say South Omaha is headed by an unqualified, misfocused personality who has not been engaged with real issues affecting people of color or Chicano issues, and its major city ordinance concerns cars parking on the grass in South Omaha. Have you changed your mind about this incompetent city council person who doesn't have a clue? And also, when he was on the board of Metro, he didn't really bust a grape there. He was just non-compliant, as obviously he was not the smartest person on the board. Again, as an elected official, I get to say anything I want to say about an elected official. But what is your opinion? Do you think he's coming around? Is he getting some kind
No,
of gray matter in his head or what?
no. It's kind of sad to say this, but it's unfortunate. I don't think he has the capacity to be able to deal effectively as a city council person, which is why I've called for his resignation. Of course, he didn't resign. But let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. When I was complaining about the fact that the economy in South Omaha after the Glen Valley food raid went in downhill completely. It's still downhill. The economy among these merchants in South Omaha is less than 50% now. And many of these folks, small business owners, are struggling just to survive. And so when I pointed out, and I wrote about it, that the merchants on Farnham Street who were suffering because of that new rail system that the city is crazy about and installing and wrecking the streets over there in that part of town, the Chamber of Commerce came forward and said, we're going to raise more than $1 million to help out those businesses survive what the city is doing with that rail system. But do you think the chamber would lift a penny to offer it to the people in down South Omaha because of what happened with ICE
Mhm.
and how they're suffering in the economy? No. So then finally, because I was complaining about it, this duality of how they treat some people and how they treat others, like Latinos and blacks, I raised that issue fervently. So here's what he came up with, this city councilman. He stepped up because I was calling him out for not saying or doing anything about it. And I called him out. And so what he did was he said, I'm going to start a campaign to publicize for people to come out and shop in South Omaha. So he says, no, no, really, that's what he dealt to do, right? So him and Heath Mello, I saw a photo op where they said, yeah, we're going to raise some money and help out with a PR campaign for South Omaha Latino uh, merchants. And after a while, I know some people that gave him $500.
Oh, wow.
I know an attorney, a law office gave him $500 based in South Omaha because they told me they did. And so I said, well, what happened to those $500 that you gave him? The lady said, well, I don't know because he never told us what he did with the money. After we gave it to him, we never heard from him again.
Wow.
She said, my husband tried to talk to him a couple times when he saw him in some gatherings, but he always avoided my husband. So I asked around, I asked, what happened to the money that this man raised for a PR campaign for the merchants of South Omaha? And the answer was, well, he bought, this is actually a joke. He bought a couple of ads in English speaking newspapers, including the Omaha World Herald, the Papillion Times or the Bellevue Times, a couple of in English, and I never saw them. And nobody in my community saw these
Right,
ads.
right.
Nobody, I mean, that was a complete waste. I don't know how much money the man threw away, but that was a bungled, idiotic effort on his part. It was so, I mean, I didn't even know what to say anymore. I thought this guy is just so foolish and bungling. He just cannot get it together. It's really sad
It's
that we
painful in
have to
this day and
rely.
age. It's
It's really
painful.
sad that we have to rely on someone like that that
Pure
represents our
incompetence.
community.
Lazy and incompetent. Sad.
Well, it's insulting. It's an insult to me personally. It's an insult to my intelligence, and it's an insult to my community's intelligence. And
Right.
we don't need that nonsense.
Right. By the way, we pass our break time. Let people ask you a question, but I will want to say I did try to catch up with Heath Mello when he was working with the university system way back. He never responded. When he's been a Chamber of Commerce director, I asked him some stuff, or if he would do something, no response. Again, I've been knowing Heath before he even ran for office when he was working in Metro. I'm disappointed in his connection in North and South Omaha on a higher level, particularly the kind of money that he's making. I know he ran for
Yeah.
mayor. He didn't get many votes, but Heath has got to step his game up because he started in South Omaha and I guess he was running against somebody who was well known. He won and became a state senator. Then from that point on, you don't hear anything I'm talking about some of the very issues we are. But I want to open it up. Anybody want to ask Ben a question, feedback? Because this is the time. We got a couple of folks here, Facebook Live. So Ben is in the set. Ben is in the house.
I'm in the
Any
house.
feedback? Because I could ask questions all day, but yeah. And Ben, we didn't even talk much about your legal experience, man. You went to law school in Arizona, and you know a lot of legal stuff that goes on. So that's one of the reasons why you and Ernie can able to slam back at some of these individuals who act like they know everything about the legalities of our system. I know you called them out a couple of times on some legal
Well, let
issues
me
in
let
those
me
letters.
let me tell you about my experience in going to school. I came out of the military for about a year. I wandered around the Southwest, visited family in Phoenix in Arizona, and then when I came back to Nebraska, I started some advocacy with a small group of activists in Scottsbuff, which surprised me they were even there. So a few people were activists along with some Peace Corps members, and they were trying to do things with the farm workers to help their lives get better. So I liked that. I liked what they were doing. So I joined them. I wasn't getting paid. I just volunteered my time. And in that role, uh, I was asked to help a family, a farm worker family from Wyoming, who had not been paid by the farmer for the work that they had done that summer. Then they needed to get back to Texas, and they came in a big farm truck with a load full of kids and blankets and mattresses in the back, which was not uncommon. That's the way they traveled. So they were out $600, and this is 1969. And $600 back then was a lot of
Wow.
money. And of course they had to feed the kids, clothe the kids, and take them back to Texas to go to school. So they were out the money, and they came to our little committee, our little group for help. So we had a meeting, and the director looked at me and said, Ben, can you help these folks? I said, what do you mean? He says, they need someone to go to Cheyenne, the capital of Wyoming, next week to argue their case before a group, a panel of farmers they have a statewide panel of farmers that oversees complaints like this. So we need someone to go down there. Would you go? I said, you want me to represent them as their what? As their lawyer? He said, well, represent them. Why don't we say that? We want to do it. I said, I'll do it. I'll do it. Well, I mean, they chose me. He picked me because he thought I was able to do it. I was able to handle it.
Right.
So I borrowed a suit jacket. I don't even think it fit properly. Borrowed one of my dad's ties. My cousin and a friend, we jumped into his van and we took off to Wyoming. Met the family. They showed me a little chit card where the man of the house had kept records
Right.
of every field they worked and what days they worked. He was really diligent about keeping records, which was great. So I went in. Now I didn't say I'm his lawyer. I just sat there and they said, "Are you representing the family?" Yes, I am. There was 5 older white guys. Obviously, they were former farmers and now work on that committee. And then the farmer came in with a lawyer. So when they asked me to present the case from the family, I presented the case. But I thought, sure as heck, these 5 older guys are not going to give him anything, but I got to do my best. So I presented the evidence and I said, this is the chit cards that this man kept. His English is not the best, but you can see he did mark down the dates and the fields where they worked, the hours, and how much they deserve to get paid. And the farmer made some nonsense about, yeah, they got paid. That don't mean nothing, this kind of nonsense. His lawyer was the same kind of BS. No, it took us about an hour. And we got out of there, and I told my cousin, let's get the heck out of here, because if they find out I'm not legal, if I'm not a lawyer, I don't want to get busted in Wyoming and spend my time here in the penitentiary. Let's get the heck out of here. We got in that van and tore back across the border to Scottsbuff, man.
Oh,
The
that's funny.
following week, I got a call at home from the director, and he said, Ben, come on down here. He said, we got some news that you might want to hear. I said, oh, no. So I went down there. He said, I got a call from the family, and they're going to come down today and bring us a gift because they won the
Oh,
case.
wow.
I said, they won? He says, you won. He said, not only did they get the $600, but they got a $600 fine against the farmer, and they're going to get that money too.
Oh,
So they want to come by and say thank you. And sure enough, they showed up in that big old farm truck with a bucket of chicken for us and a case of beer, and just so happy. I mean, here's how people in that situation are. They are so grateful they actually cry.
wow.
They hug you. They're so
No,
blessed to
I
have you
understand.
represent them, to have, and that feeling of being able to help these people washed over me, and it gave me a like a spiritual lift.
No, I understand.
I felt so good about that I had helped them. And so it was then that I made a final determination. I got to go to college and get an education so I can walk this earth like a man. That was the whole premise of me going to college. So I wound up at the university, had a 1.6 GPA my first year. I was 23 years old, turned 23
We're talking
at
about
the
Lincoln, Nebraska, right?
yeah.
Okay.
And I had never seen so many Phillies walking around on campus, and some of them were attractive. And of course, I could go into a bar and have a couple of beers. So I spent my first year pretty much just messing around, take a few classes, drop a few classes. I had a 1.6. So I had to go to summer school in Lincoln to make up my grades so I could go back in, because I had to talk with myself.
Right.
Like, are you just going to fool around here, man, or are you going to get serious? So I thought I better get serious. So I got some classes, got my grades up to over C, and went back. And that following year, my sophomore year, we started the Mexican American Student Association. I finally met some other Latino kids, university students, met 4 of them. And we 5 began MASA, Mexican American Student Association, to recruit more Latino kids, more faculty, and to do Chicano studies on campus. That was what we gathered around, that concept. We all had the same fervor. It turned out great for the 5 of us because we all thought and behaved the same way. And all 5 of us made achievements in our own personal lives professionally. And so I'm very proud of the 5 of us that started MASA. 2 of them have passed away, unfortunately. Rod and Marta Hernandez of Lincoln, brother and sister. Marta was a doctor. She was a doctor at Martin Luther King in San Diego for
Wow.
years. Yeah. When
What
she
year was
became,
that? What year was that? What year was that you did that? Do
that
you
was
remember?
that was 1970, 71.
Okay,
About
got
then.
you.
That was
Gotcha.
the same year I think I met Ernie. I think Ernie maybe was elected around 68, 69
Okay,
from
gotcha.
North Omaha.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
okay, okay. I was gonna say, any questions from the audience? I want to give people a chance. They want to ask you a question, anybody, because we got a couple of people here. We got some Facebook Live folks following us too. Question again for me is, I'm disappointed in the miseducation of Omaha Plantation schools and its treatment of 85% of the students of color, so on in the district. Are you aware of anything going on in OPS that can help some of our kids get to college and university and graduate and so on? Because when we did a report, we saw that there was some disparities in what happens when the kid leave high school and get to college, and the dropout rate, they're not prepared. So what's been your experience with OPS in over the years in terms of you as an activist or an advocate trying to help our community?
well, I have actually had some interactions with South High School primarily. I have been a visitor, a guest at times. I was asked to join their community advisory board, which we had one meeting that I attended, and after that, they never invited me back.
Why not? Why not?
I don't know. I don't know,
They
man.
never told
I
you.
No, I don't know. I did ask questions about the faculty, the makeup of the faculty. It's 96, 97% Latino, 2% African American, 1% Native, and maybe 1% white at the time. But I questioned the programs that they were offering the kids. In that committee of about a dozen people, I was the only Latino on that committee.
Wow. In
High
South High
school,
School.
in South High School, 96, 97% Latino. I was the only Latino on that advisory committee of about a dozen folks.
Oh, wow. That's
I
painful.
mean, that told me a lot. That told me a lot. And it was a very sad for me to see that. Uh, I didn't know how to raise hell about it, but I felt like I had to say something, and I did. And I challenged them, and I was never invited back on that. Yeah,
well,
this is what happens. You
well,
know, this is what
OPS is
happens.
notorious for not bringing the real people in. They got all their counterfeit personalities and people who are turncoats, or as my mother used to call them, friends of the system, working on these committees. And at one point, they even had their lawyer get on a drop. They were supposed to be in the meeting like chair, and then they turned around and became a participant so they could debate me in the meeting because they knew they didn't have enough people with what they call the intellects or the wherewithal to talk
Yeah.
about some of these grassroots issues. Anyone want to come in now? We have about 10 minutes or so, 13 minutes left. I want to give people if want to have something to say here. By the way, there's a question, and this is in the back of my head, and I would tell you, I'm not going to drop names today, but I had two people who physically threatened to kick my butt when I was
Uh,
advocating. Both of them are now late, and I do remember that happened physically. But my question to you, have you ever gotten into a situation where you're advocating or doing something, and someone want to get physical with you in the work that you've done over the years in this community?
no,
That has never happened.
no. It never happened. When I was younger, I had some run-ins with several individuals who were either attorneys or people who were directors who I thought were phony. We had a director of a program in South Phoenix. I was a volunteer there for 6 months. It was called the Chicano Awareness Center, and kind of like the Latino Center of the Midlands is now. And it was in the barrio. And I was asked by one of the young women that worked there who got, I don't know if she met me in a bar or something. She asked me to volunteer my time, and I did. And I discovered that the man couldn't write. I mean, at all. He could not write at all. So he had his secretary write his letters for him. I was placed in a back room, which is more like a garage with a table and a chair to interview and talk to clients. Well, in about a week, I started getting all the action coming to me. And I know that this man got jealous about the fact that I was starting to get people coming to see me, because I had a law degree in my back pocket and I was an educated man. So people that need help. They don't want to hear some nonsense from a guy who can't even write, and doesn't know anything. All he did was strut around in a three-piece suit all day and thought he looked good, and that was all that mattered to
That
him.
was funny.
But let me remark about something that happened when I was graduating from the university. I had a sociology major, and I took that only because my friend Marty told me it was an easy major. I didn't know anything about college, and so I needed to find a major, and he said, "Take sociology, it's easy." I said, "All right, I'll take it." Well, after my first year, I decided I could spread my wings and start to pick my classes that were outside the realm of sociology. So I picked and chose, and I did a lot of writing and poli-sci kind of classes, things that I liked. And so even though I was getting a BA in sociology, I was going to graduate. I had a month ago, and I was in the student union one day where I usually had hung. We had a barrio, a ghetto corner in the student union back then.
Well, so the black folks when I was in
Yeah,
college,
yeah.
same
All the
thing.
black folks, all the Latinos, we all
Right,
hung around the same area,
right. In Lincoln,
Yeah,
right? I understand. I
yeah,
remember
in
that.
Lincoln, right. So one day I'm sitting there having a cup of coffee, and in comes with a rush a guy by the name of John Robinson. Black dude. I don't know if he's from Omaha or not, but his name is John Robinson. John Robinson sees me, Ben, I've been looking for you for 2 weeks, man. I said, what's up, man? I said, have a seat, brother. Hadn't seen him since we were both activists on campus. He said, man, he says, I'm at the law school now. I said, you are? He says, yeah, man. He says, I'm my freshman year. And he says, I'm on a committee there. He says, and they want to recruit more minorities. I said, oh, well, good, man. I'm glad they're opening the doors finally. He says, well, that's why I came to talk to you. I said, about what? He says, I want you to, yeah. He gave me a spiel, man. He gave me a pitch. He says, I want you to go to law school. I said, what? I said, come on, John. Are you sitting? I said, I don't know a doggone thing about law school. I've never taken a class in law, and I don't know anything about. I said, no. He railed on me for about 20 minutes, man. I said, look, okay, John, let me ask you this. Who is my competition if I go to law school or any law school? He said, Ben, it's predominantly white kids, kids from upper class families, kids who have been kind of prepared for years, some of them, for this big moment when they're going to apply, take the LSAT test, and go to law school. Their families are counting on them. They're the pride of the family, and it's a big deal. I said, so my competition is going to be white kids primarily. He said, yeah. I said, I like that. I like that. I like the competition part of this because that's my element, man. So I
Right.
got to prove myself. If they're the cream of the crop, I want to dive into the cream with them, and I want to swim as fast as I could, man. So I said, "What is this LSAT?" He says, "It's a comprehensive test. You take it. Takes about 3 or 4 hours to complete. Costs you $75." I said, "John, I'm not going to pay $75 to take a test." He says, he says, "No, Ben." He says, "I'll pay for it, man." He says, "I just want you. I know you can do it, Ben. Take the test, would you?" I said, "All right, John. For you, you pay for it. I'll take it. I'll sign up." A couple of weeks later, I took the test, got my results, looked at it. It didn't mean anything to me. It's a number. So I called John. I said, John, I got my test results. He says, what'd you get? And I told him. He starts screaming, man, oh my God, you're in. He said, people that have been studying for years don't get that kind of
Wow.
score.
Wow.
I don't know that. I said, oh, really? He says, yes. Now, the thing with me is, I had a certain flair and confidence about myself even back then because in the Army wanted me to go to OCS, Officer Candidate School. They
Mm.
wanted me to be an officer during Vietnam, and I declined because it meant 2.5 more years of service. And the rumor was hot and heavy that officers were the first targets of the Viet Cong and the VC.
Gotcha.
But the authoritarian type of that the Army was a department of military people, that was not to my liking. I was a good soldier. I served for 2 years. I came out a buck sergeant in 2 years. So that's what they had a lot of respect for me, the people in the military. So I was often chosen for certain assignments on my own. They would send me out on missions by myself. I was in the Saigon port on a two-man patrol jeep for almost 10 months.
Wow.
And most of the time, half the time, I was by myself. I
Mm.
had a sergeant that I rode shotgun with, and when he went to his room in the middle of Saigon, I stayed on the port in a Quonset hut with a bunch of Seabees, Navy guys,
Okay.
who handled all the incoming boats and ships and other things. All I did was slept there in a bunk. The rest of the time, I was a free man, but a lonely man. I was lonely because all my friends were back in the company I had left, where they pulled me out from. But they pulled me out for a reason. They felt I was confident enough and capable of handling whatever they threw at me.
Wow.
So that told me something about what people thought about me. Even people that I didn't know that well. All I know is that they kept picking me and picking me for these special assignments. And so that gave me a little more confidence in myself. I'm thinking, well, if they see something in me that, good, I guess I'll go with it. John Robinson was a big factor and who I am today.
And
A
going to
black
law
man,
school and so on.
a black man, a black activist on campus who thought enough about me to come and get me off my butt
Go to
and
law school.
studying law.
By
That's
the way,
John
Ben,
Robertson.
we're about at the very end, but one question I saved I wanted to ask you. I was on the board of the Chicano Awareness Center. That's how you and I initially made contact. And back then, they were known for advocacy, social justice, so on. There's been a slew of directors over the years. And my question, in light of all what you do, and again, I say this very respectfully, I don't hear a lot from the Latinos of the Midlands. I know you spoke highly of Heartland work. I called the director if they didn't return a call. A lot of people don't return calls about basic stuff or letters. So my question is, what is the role and what do you think of the Latinos of the Midlands today as you know them doing the kind of work you do as a volunteer for the most part? And many of those people are making big money doing what they do. And again, I want you to give us your unbiased opinion, which is what you've always done.
Well, it saddens me because, to a large extent, because they become kind of a little corporation unto themselves. And so they must do a good job with a limited number of kids that they serve. They serve only a few kids, select number of kids, maybe 30, 20, 30, 25, 30, 40 at a time. But that's the gist of their product. That's what they tend to. If you remember the old days, back in the activism days when we started back in the 60s and 70s, the Chicano Awareness Center was open house,
Right.
open doors. Anybody who had a problem could come in them doors and people would try to resolve them. Well, that ended 10, 12 years ago. That stopped. And there was a time for about a year when they were calling me, the staff would call me and refer a person to me that needed help because they couldn't handle it. And they knew that with my educational background, I could probably help. Well, I did it because I'm a good guy. I try to be a good guy. And I said, but my wife started getting on my case about it. And she said, Ben, you can't be doing all of these things for them. That's their work. They get paid for that.
Oh, you're doing
And
as a
then
volunteer.
yes,
Oh,
they weren't paying
wow.
me. They weren't paying me. And I didn't ask to get paid. I was publishing, I was writing, and we were doing fine. So I didn't need to get paid by them. But if someone came to me with a problem, and I still do this, if I can help somebody with a problem, and I don't I don't charge them or anything, and I can do it and I can handle it effectively, I'll do it because that's what I'm here for. That's my role in this community. That's my role in society. That's the way I see myself. Okay. Uh, I'm still a guy from the corner. I got a lot of street in me, as you know, and just like you do, I still got a lot of street in us. But you know what I found over the years, man? Having that street in us is a big help.
Right,
Being bicultural is a
right,
big help to us because we can see the different sides of the world.
right,
We can dissect, and we're not like this, narrow-minded and only a limited view. We see the breadth of Americana because we've suffered through it. We've lived through it.
right.
And so when people do these unholy things like they're doing in Iran and other countries, it pains me, man. It hurts me to see that. To think that we murdered 150 schoolgirls in Iran and it become almost like not a big deal because it's them that got killed.
Right,
Well, them is a reflection of us,
right,
and it really kind of upsets me to see that, to hear it, and to see the leadership of this country, which is incompetent, inept, and racist.
wow,
That's a pain to me. I've
wow,
served this country, and I've served it well, and it hurts me to say that, but it's true that we have this bifurcated system of governing, and we have people at the top that shouldn't be at the top, but they are.
right. We're down to our last time, and I just want to say thank you, Ben, for coming on the show and throwing out some light. This is your second time we've had a chance to interview, and one of the things that we challenge each other is about how do we keep notching it up because some of the young people don't know what we've gone through, and sometimes they're not even open to listen to some of our stories in history, how we got there. You share some beautiful, wonderful, powerful stories, and as I've said earlier, I'd like to see other people come to the forefront because, again, we cannot go forward. I'm thinking about Kwame Ture or Stokely Carmichael, Charles Hamilton in their book where they say in the book Black
Uh,
Power, they say something like, in order for the group to go forward, they must coalesce first. It's hard to go and fight people when you're all scattered. And again, as Malcolm, I said earlier, says that we're out organizing. So there's some things we should be able to do as a people. But I really appreciate you coming on. Hopefully get you back again to share some of the things you're working on and challenging systems and not being a friend of the system when you see our people are oppressed. The last point I want to say, the thing that really bothered me a few years ago is when I saw that Mexican guy who was trying to come across the water, the ocean, whatever, and he was darting in there, they drowned. And I found a righteous indignation why more people didn't complain about how we treat people who try to come here for a new way of life, and particularly those of us who know that there are many people who come to our city or to our country or to this state, and that they catch holy hell because we haven't paved the way for them to enjoy the kind of lifestyles that other countries allow us to go over there. But on that note, Ben, appreciate you greatly. Thanks again for coming on and throwing out some heavy light, and hopefully we'll get you back again to do the same thing. But appreciate you very much.
It's an honor. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it very much.
And
All
as
right.
we always end, may the force be with you. Barocco.